Hi everyone, welcome back to our couch series. I'm here with Ross, and today we're going to speak about eating disorders. So Eating Disorders Awareness Week was just last week, and we just wanted to have an elaborate discussion about what it is and how to manage it a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a big topic across the lifespan. Really, I think, I've worked with young people as young as 11 or 12 who are presenting with some of these emerging traits of eating concerns. And I think whether or not you're a teenager, a young adult, an adult, kind of, midlife, these traits can still affect you and have such a huge impact and interference on your life. So I think it's great that this awareness week was there, and we get a chance to speak about it.
Yeah. The onset, I was just reading, the onset age of an eating disorder used to be around 14, 15. Recently, it dropped down to 8. Wow.
I think, I remember I read an article a few weeks ago that 50% of all mental health concerns start before the age of 14 anyway. So this kind of ties in a little bit with that. And I think, maybe the emergence of different types of life situations and technology introductions have made a huge impact on this as well. I think there's lots of causal factors, but 8 years old is incredibly young to be thinking about how you look, what you're eating. I mean, it's always good to be health conscious and conscious of what you're eating, but to have that additional hypervigilance on what you're eating and your appearance and how you look at that age is really quite scary.
But the hypervigilance about what you're eating and what you look is one aspect of the disorder. I mean, the bigger aspect of the disorder is more about control and managing emotions, and this is where there's a lot of the struggle to overcome it.
Yeah, I think with the teenagers that I've worked with that present with like either emerging or an actual diagnosable eating disorder, a lot of them will say that, or what we pick up on and what we work through is self-esteem concerns.
Yes.
This seems to typically, but not always, be quite a significant underpinning kind of causal factor into what's led to maybe seeking out additional control or looking for other methods to be able to boost your self-worth or self-esteem. So a really core part of the work I do with young people, not just for eating concerns, but especially with eating concerns, would be this self-esteem rebuilding. Confidence, how they view themselves, the type of thoughts that they have about themselves, how they feel about themselves. So very much kind of building again from the foundations and beginning to introduce perhaps more positive events or situations in their life that give them that sense of accomplishment and kind of confidence to do more things, which then leads to this self-esteem actually kind of recovering and building a little bit as a part of a step of overcoming these eating concerns. But it's not just self-esteem. No. Anxiety type concerns, low mood concerns.
Depression, yes.
Yeah.
The comorbidities are a lot impulse control and emotional regulation concerns. This is a big one that you see. But it's what gets disregarded a lot about it is that there is a genetic predisposition to it. There is a neurobiology to it. So I don't know, that's probably not your experience, but I mean, when I was in high school, most of girls when they're in high school, you get to this age and it's prom and and the group of girls will have a bet of let's go on a diet together. And everybody has the diet and is fine, and then there's one person who's gonna fall into the eating disorder, and that's the one who actually has the genetic predisposition for it. So there's that, and a lot of the times people tend to disregard that fact and think, oh, you don't have control over your eating, or you don't have control over your relationship with food, and it's not necessarily that. There's a very strong neurobiology to it that plays into why the eating disorders usually develop.
I think I see that too as well, really. I think there's the biological aspect of the genetics, which can or cannot trigger off like an emerging eating disorder episode or diagnosis. But as part of the genetic kind of interference as well, there's this, you know, if a parent has or does experience an eating disorder type concern, yes, you could say that genetically the child is predisposed, but also the environment in which they're living. Like even if a parent is in, you know, is not experiencing active symptoms of an eating disorder, the fact that they've been through it, they probably within the household do, you know, have certain systems, regimes around eating, their own thoughts on eating, and you know, habits. So I think it's really easy for children to pick up on that type of maybe anxiety around food, which can, if they have a genetic predisposition, really trigger it off. And even if they don't have a genetic predisposition, you know, again, in that family environment, if there's lots of anxiety, lots of stress, OCD or control-seeking behaviors, it's really common that it can just trigger off. Yeah. You know, without, it doesn't have to be someone saying, you know, a comment about someone's appearance or their weight. It can almost manifest from all of these other types of these stresses and situations too.
But the genetic predisposition, the thing about it is that it's not a gene that says eating disorder, obviously. And then the other thing about it is that it can skip generations. So the parents could be not displaying any active symptoms of an eating disorder or ever displayed that, but then it runs in their family. And then the other thing, as you said, is not only the regimes around food, but also the concern with looks and appearance, and how much that is, like how much of the conversation within the family surrounds that. It doesn't necessarily have to be comments to the child, but it's comments in front of the child about other people, about their appearance. How much emphasis and importance is given to physical appearance. Kids really pick up on that.
They do.
And it becomes a core of their self-esteem.
Yeah.
And hence the disorder kind of, you see it develop. I've seen lots of clients who, if you ask them about their family environment, no apparent eating disorder, no active symptomatic eating disorder in the family, but a lot of concern around looks, a lot of concern around food, a lot of concern around a lot of regimes and diets and regimens. So that kind of gives the eating disorder kind of the environment for it to develop and to trigger and to start if you have the gene for it.
Yeah, I mean, you touched on some really key and big points there. And I suppose a lot of the times that I'm meeting with young people and parents, the parents, even if there is discussion around food, in whichever capacity that is, or appearance or looks, you know, it would be extremely rare for a parent to kind of almost acknowledge or be aware that what they're saying or doing could trigger off or create this anxiety. So in defense of parents, you know, I mean, they don't always know if they're talking about appearance or, you know, how the young person looks or what they're wearing. You know, they shouldn't automatically even know in themselves, oh, I shouldn't say that because it can trigger off something. Yeah. A lot of the times it's quite subconscious. Parents aren't aware of the possible impact of what they're saying, but still it's said and it has an impact on the young person. I mean, it's really tricky, especially in those household environments. And
it depends on the sensitivity of the child, because as much as I see this, I see clients who have, the family does not place any importance on appearance, and still the eating disorder will develop. So it's not to blame parents necessarily, but then it's just to pinpoint the different aspects or different triggers, factors that play into an onset, and why the onset is becoming at a younger age. Men are developing, it's becoming extremely prevalent in men now. Different kinds, of course, but still.
And I don't think that's just that the diagnoses with men have gone up. The problems have been there, and yes, they are increasing. But I mean, a positive kind of slant to look on that is that men are seeking out more mental health support than they were before. They are more vocal. You know, I just read an article, not an article, but a post on a Facebook group this morning. Really nice message for the other guys on this group. You know, it's okay to cry. It's okay to feel down. You don't always have to have a solid face. And I think guys are becoming a little bit more open to that. You know, like, it's all right if I'm stressed, and I talk about it. So I think, yes, the diagnosis rate has gone up across many mental health concerns for guys, and we know about the risks that they're at of suicide. You know, I mean, there's a core age range of guys that, you know, do commit suicide, and I think in the US or in the UK, or perhaps both, it's the third leading cause of death amongst men between the age of, I think, 21 to 40.
I don't know about that. I know for a fact that they are twice more likely to commit suicide than women.
Yeah. And I think when you factor in a possible eating concern, which we already know has such a high mortality rate anyway, you know, if a guy experiences it, maybe, you know, maybe it is a little bit more problematic, especially if they're not talking about it.
Yes.
So I think it's great that the guys are being more vocal about these concerns that they have, and you know, you're right, more and more so over the last 2 or 3 years, I've been meeting with teenagers or young adults who are men who are coming in perhaps with like comorbid body dysmorphia with the eating type concerns. And I think a lot of that again is about pressure to look a certain way. You know, Men's Health magazine every month, the front cover is always this guy who, you know, just like has the body goals of what lots of guys anyway want to have. You know, so there's lots of interfering factors, but I think it's a real worry, especially for guys at the moment, because a lot of them won't vocalize those concerns.
You know, you touched on a very good point, is all these men's magazine and the body. And I think for women, because it's been going on for such a long time, not that we're more prepared for it, but I think we're more vocal about it and talking about, okay, you need to limit your view of these things and limit your exposure to these things. And men are not. It reminded me, remember that the workshop that we did 2 years ago, and I actually had to spend a lot of time to find a picture of a man, celebrity in the 80s or the 90s, who had a topless picture, because that wasn't the trend. There wasn't a lot of. If you look at Robert De Niro's body, there's no muscles, there's no Al Pacino, same thing, and then it goes into the 80s, and then it was during the late 80s, early 90s, and this is when it started to kick off. And now there's no way you'll find a picture of a current male leading celebrity that you won't find a picture of him topless and showing his muscles and showing their bodies, and it does affect the men's goals and what they want, and then it ends up being developing into any. So it does trigger.
I think there's just so many factors out there that lead to kind of emerging eating concerns. I think you're right. You'd be hard pressed to find or to not find a picture of a guy, male, celebrity, Hollywooder, who under the age of 50 has not got a picture of himself half naked. But I wonder if, like you said, not that it's normal, but women are a little bit more normalized to seeing or kind of having these, you know, like social media adverts or presentations around pictures around women, maybe not always, you know, like covering up or fully clothed. It seems to be, whether it's right or wrong, a little bit more socially acceptable for a woman to kind of, you know, be showing her body a little bit more.
It's not I don't think that it's about showing the body. It's about this increasing somewhat demand or social pressure of what your body should look like.
I hear this all the time. Body goals.
Yeah, your body goals, and it drives me insane, because your body looks the way it is genetically supposed to look. There's a biological set point for your weight that is always going to be there, no matter how much you try to pressure your body to lose or gain weight. There's always going to go back to the biological set point, and there's no awareness to that, and then there's all this pressure. And it changes, of course, from thin and long legs. I was growing up, and I wanted to be like Claudia Schiffer. Of course, that went away when I realized that I was going to get this short. But it's it moves, it changes. Now
Yeah.
everybody's with curves, everybody's is getting all of these implants. So the fact that it changes, that says a lot about the fact that it's not true and it's not applicable to everyone.
Yeah.
I think the difference between, it is more normalized for women than it is for men, but it is normalized in the sense that the normalization comes in. It's normal for society to tell women what they should look like and what their bodies should be like. It's new for men. And I think that because of eating disorders, since it started, and I mean, since they were able to diagnose it, they've always blamed media for it before being able to see the genetic and the neurobiological and all the other aspects that play in. Before understanding it completely, it was always thought to be the media. So I think there's always been a movement, although not very loud and now getting louder, that speaks against that this trend of telling women what they should look like. For men, I think it's a little bit new. Everything is new, so there's not that trend for them. And then with social media being in your face all the time, it plays into triggering people a lot more.
I do think I think the pressure on men has increased to look a certain way, but I still don't think there's a really high expectation for them to look a certain way. You know, like I think about dad's bod. You know, I don't know if you're familiar with this term.
Yeah, I know.
All right. You know, I mean, this is not, from what a lot of people might consider to be a desirable body. It's not all muscular, 8-pack or 6-pack. You know, it's a normal looking, decent enough body shape. I mean, it's not a concern or a problem, but it's, you know, some men are striving for this as well. And I think that's a really good sign that, you know, they're kind of carefree. Appearance isn't the foundation of their life or what they strive for. They've got other more important things in their life that they have to consider. So I think maybe there's just a big gap with guys. You know, many should think they should look a certain way, like Hollywood's, you know, 20 or 30-year-old, and others kind of on the other end of the spectrum, almost completely. You know, it's not a huge factor in their life as long as they're healthy and leading the life that they want to. Their appearance isn't the #1 priority, which I think is great. It really shouldn't be.
Yeah, I think that's true. For men, the appearance is not a #1 priority. For women, it's a little bit different.
Or maybe there's just this gulf in between. You know, some guys, of course, we can't dismiss the many guys out there who do experience body image concerns and eating concerns, and we know it's on the increase. But equally, there's, you know, a proportion of guys that it's not affected. The media and Hollywood movies and how someone should look, you know, they're happy in themselves. So, but I think there's maybe the bridge, the gulf is just getting bigger and bigger, more extreme, severe cases with, you know, this smaller pool of guys who are just kind of not being hit too much by these mental health concerns.
What I wanted to move on to is the idea that what we said at the beginning, that eating disorders is not only about the body and what it looks like and the weight. It's not only about that. That has to do with control and also managing emotions. And I wanted you to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think, you know, so we spoke a little bit about self-esteem and comorbidity of emerging or eating disorder diagnoses. The control element, so when I'm working with a young person, like I'm always with an eating disorder, I'm always keeping it in my mind that they have this, you know, perhaps lack of or hypersensitive impulsivity trait, perhaps. Either it's absent or it's very much there. And I typically kind of consider some of those impulse control mechanisms a little bit like OCD.
Yeah.
So they have these obsessive thoughts about perhaps looking a certain way, feeling a certain way, coming across a certain way, and then they are compelled to do something about it. Now, of course, eating disorder is different from OCD, but it shares some consistent
It
traits.
actually does share a lot of the traits, and it's been genetically linked. So it's OCD and anorexia, not specifically, is genetically linked. And a lot of psychiatrists would medicate an anorexic with OCD medication, and they will respond.
Yeah.
So they are very. It's true. They do have a lot of common elements.
So I often am keeping that in my mind about the OCD type traits, and I mean the core part for me, of course, is as a CBT therapist, it's challenging the unpleasant or unhelpful thinking strategies, or not strategies, but thinking processes that they have towards their body, the way they see themselves, how they feel about themselves, reflections, all of these types of things. So from a CBT point of view, if we're working more specifically on the types of obsessions that they have, it would be about trying to challenge some of those and doing the self-esteem work at the same time. But I think I'd be probably quite hard-pressed to think of a young person that I've worked with who is not presenting with obsessive traits and compulsive traits. And what I try and help them do is to just reduce them as much as they can, whilst also working on the eating disorder itself. The other mechanisms at play, self-esteem, low self-confidence, anxiety, with all of those other comorbidities. But I think control is a huge part of the eating disorder.
Huge part of the
almost
eating disorder.
like one of the fundamental aspects of it.
Yes.
That trigger it and maintain it.
And maintain it. And even with, I mean, you spoke a lot about what it's like for anorexics and the control aspect of it, but when it comes to bulimics, even it looks like they have no control, but to them, it is some aspect of control. I'm controlling what comes into my body and controlling what comes out and how it comes out.
Completely.
So it's control is a big theme when it comes to eating disorders, and a lot of the times because obviously I don't work with teenagers or younger people, but when you have partners asking me, what do I do? They refuse to follow their meal plan, they refuse to do this. I'm like, when you intervene, when you do an eating disorder intervention and you're giving them a meal plan and they have to eat it, and somebody is up their neck making sure that they're eating what they're supposed to eat, they lose, and they're not allowed to cook their food, they're not allowed to exercise. You take away everything from them and you tell them this is that's your new life. So you take away all kinds of control. And I always say, you know what, give them a little bit of control. So they don't want to finish the meal right now and they want to take a break for an hour. Give them that hour break.
For sure.
Give them those little things, little aspects. I don't want to eat potatoes. Fine, eat sweet potatoes. As long as they're getting their calories in, as long as they're getting back those, restoring their weight, however way it is, and obviously not binging and purging, just give them a little bit of that, because otherwise they feel like the treatment is, and this is why a lot of times they drop out of therapies, you're taking away from them that coping mechanism.
The mechanism that they use or are using in their life. This is not just a mechanism that they sometimes introduce or don't. This is like their driving mechanism.
Yeah, this is their everyday life.
Yeah, control and maintaining that control is really high.
Yeah.
So I think, not taking away all to start with. Even in a pure OCD type intervention, you wouldn't strip all of the compulsions straight away. You start reducing them until you get to a point where the young person or adult feels more like they can tolerate the unpleasant thoughts or feelings that they have. Of course, it's important to have a meal plan. And
to follow the meal plan and to follow up with a nutritionist. That's key.
But there's a fine line between supporting a young person or an adult through this concern, or making them become resistant to wanting to engage in a therapy or even just change for themselves. I meet a lot of resistance with eating disorders, and we know it to be a part of the therapeutic process. We completely understand that, but it is about building that relationship and just making sure that that you don't strip the young person or adult of the way that they've been approaching life. You guide them through it, you support them, you provide safety nets. It's not about them changing their lifestyle from one day to being completely the opposite the next day. It's a process. And you go through stages. And I think maybe that's something that scares people away from the therapy part. They think this is going to change from day one and I can't handle it.
And the perception, this is something else, the perception that the eating disorder is some kind of an enemy. You need to fight it. It's not necessarily. It's something that came up to help you through other stuff that you're not able to handle. So let's understand what is it that you're not able to handle. At least that's how I do the therapies. Let's understand what you're not able to handle, and what is the function, what is the role of that eating disorder in your life, and then maybe introduce other ways of dealing with those circumstances, and then automatically the eating disorder won't be needed anymore.
Yeah, I think you touched on a really, really important point, the function. So a lot of people, and people who are experiencing the eating disorder, will believe that the function is to either perhaps lose weight, look different.
Look thin.
They're not thinking, or maybe some are, but there is a different function, a deeper function of this. Like you said, it's managing other aspects of their life that perhaps aren't going as planned. Or, you know, their self-esteem is not being that high, and they use this as a way of
feeling good about themselves.
Yeah, of course. So the function is often deeper than the act of what they're trying to achieve by not eating or throwing up. There's a function, then there's more functions underneath.
Another function is to manage feelings and emotions. Like a lot of that, you know that when you don't eat, your body is on starvation. Once you're on starvation, you're completely numb. So if you don't really want to feel any unpleasant feeling, that's one of the ways to manage it.
Management strategy.
It's a management strategy. It's not the healthiest, but it is.
Yeah.
Same with bulimics. Like they just get it out of their system.
Yeah.
Constantly. So it is that, and then when you're able to see and you make them realize it and give them those other tools, the symptoms a lot of the times subsides, but it's long-term work, and it's
I think I think people understand that. There's a lot in the media now around eating disorders, and sometimes it might scare people off that they see it as a lifelong type concern, but I mean, if you think about anxiety or stress or
depression,
it's all lifelong. It doesn't mean it can't be managed really effectively, but stress is something we will all encounter every year of our lives. Something will happen because life just
doesn't stop happening. Yeah.
The sun will go down, the sun will come up the next day. It's life continues and stress happens. So I think it's the message that I often try to help young people understand is this is just a stage in your life that will get better if you go through this process. You will learn to repair and to function in different ways and to manage those struggles in different ways. And this will be a real journey for you. You'll learn a lot from it, and it will be able to help you manage different stresses or problems in the future.
Exactly. And I think the key element of it, and this is what a lot of people don't know, it is one of the eating disorders they call it the only mental illness that kills, because that's pretty much, that's the reality of it. The physical aspect of it does cause people to end up dying. But the other thing about it is prognosis is so much better in the first year than if it's just gone untreated. It goes untreated. So I think it's important with all of this awareness that's going surrounding eating disorders to always remember that once you start feeling like something is happening, or once you start feeling like with your kids something is happening, do not wait. The prognosis is so much better, and the being able to catch it at the beginning helps a lot of people, rather than when you have it going on for years. Because of my work with adults, I see it when it's been somebody in their 40s and the eating disorder started at the age of 14. And I'm like, wow, that's going to be a long ride.
But I think this is really important, because sometimes you can have eating disorder type traits that aren't manifesting in anorexia or like a diagnosis yet, and they can stay somewhat kind of in the dark for a number of years. And they just chip away and eat away at self-esteem and confidence. So like you said, it's really important that you reach out early if you feel like, either as a young person, an adult, or as a parent, that something is maybe up or something
Yes.
isn't quite functioning as it should do with regards to, you know, the child and yourself's kind of view of yourself, your opinion, your appearance, your concerns around control or eating, anything related to that, reach out and don't delay.
Mm-hmm. You know, the thing about eating disorders is that it goes under the radar for such a long time. Unless somebody, their weight goes under,
Yeah.
which is not the only indicator of an eating disorder, because everybody, like, you can have an eating disorder and be overweight or normal weight or anything. So it goes completely under the radar, and that's why it prolongs, and treatment becomes harder, and prognosis becomes harder.
And much
So
longer,
yeah, and much longer.
often.
So yeah, it's very important when somebody notices something is off with their relationship with food, with control, managing their emotions,
Yeah.
anything like that, to reach out and just get it checked out
Yeah.
by a professional. And maybe it's nothing, maybe it's something, but
Yeah.
better be safe than sorry
Always.
in that sense. So that wraps. It's
Yeah,
a
thanks, Ray.
heavy topic.
It is.
Yeah, there's so much that can be said about it, but that wraps our episode for today. Thank you for watching us.
Thank you.
Please remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Instagram.
All right.
Thank you, Ross.
Thank you. All right. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.